Okay, the policy committee meeting is going to come to order. We have one item on the agenda for the policy committee. So, Mr. Jinko.
Good evening, Madam Superintendent, board members. Good afternoon. Tonight we have consider approval of the revisions to policy JS, students' fees, fines, and charges. This was a requirement that was put upon all boards to come up with this type of information. We've met numerous times, and the policy we have is before you related to fees and so forth. We would like to emphasize that the fees, fines, and charges policies shall be reviewed annually and revised as necessary. We know this is not an end-all to it. It is just a beginning, and we're taking baby steps, and as we need to add and revise, we will come to you accordingly.
Okay. Right, can I get a motion?
Yeah, I don't want to move on it, but I had some questions about it.
Okay, all right, so any questions?
Did you make the motion?
No, if he wants to
No,
give a motion.
we're gonna have the questions first. All right, so the floor is open for
Let's
questions.
have a motion first. I'll make a motion to accept the policy as presented.
Second.
Then you have
Oh,
discussion.
okay, so any discussions?
What, yeah, all right.
Okay, Brett.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jinko,
Yes, sir.
I guess the first question I have, because is reading through this, it almost sounds like these set fees are the only fees that we can charge these students for various classes. I'm just assuming that can't be right, right? I mean, we're not saying that $50 total, $20 total is going to cover like all art class fees or like the other fees that per class that we charge, are we?
That's going to be a yes and a no.
Okay.
The yes part is we had to come up with a policy to where we could not charge a fee for something that was related that child had to have to graduate. So we couldn't say it's an English 1 fee, an English 2 fee, et cetera. So that's kind of where we came up with this district-wide K-8 supply fee and a district-wide high school supply fee and what those numbers are, with a lot of input from administrators, teachers, et cetera. There is, the extracurricular fees, athletics, clubs, and associations may have a monetary assessment as required for participation. So there is that special course fee. If I have an art 1, 2, or 3, that's where that would fall under there. You know, ag and different things like that would fall under my special course fee.
So if it's like an elective type class, then there can be an extra fee, and that would be the up to $50?
Correct, yes, sir.
But if it's a required class, then it has to fall within the $20?
Yes, sir.
And the $20 is for all classes for a whole year?
Yes, sir.
So how's that going to, let me ask you it this way then. In comparison to last year, and if we had a student that was taking, let's say, their first year of high school, did we run some numbers to see what those were costing
Yes, sir.
last year?
Yes, sir.
What was that number?
And that number, depending on what the individual took, could have been anywhere from, and we'll stick with the high school, could have been anywhere from $25 to $50. And that is adding the special course fee to it also. So if I took an art class, you know, that would be in that $25 to $50 range from last year. So I may have had an English 1 fee of $5, a math 1, algebra fee of $5, a business fee of $5 to $10, however they did it. And I think that was the understanding of this, is just to put some uniformity into having each individual teacher develop a fee for his or her class, to have some uniformity as a district-wide fee.
Okay. And this doesn't include like school supplies that the students have to also purchase?
No, sir. No, sir. So like you said, if I want the boys to bring Kleenex, colors, et cetera, that this does not take that.
Are PE uniforms,
We specifically talked about PE uniforms, correct?
that's not included in here?
That is correct.
Okay.
May I give us a little background? So last year, Ms. Therese spent the majority of time last year. One of her projects was to kind of get a feel and assess all of the different fees that were charged to students in our parish. So, you know, what we had was different schools charging different things. One of the goals of this is to try to have a consistent fee across the parish. If you're elementary, you pay a certain fee, or if you're high school. Also, she sent surveys out to our teachers. She met and surveyed the principals, met with the principals. I know Lisa, Ms. Fassell in the audience was involved with the high school principals in this conversation as well. So what we're recommending at this time is that we have the elementary fee of the 15 and the high school for 20. The special course fee, because, you know, we have different high schools. For instance, Hammond High School has some IB type courses, as an example. So the special course fee it could be for special fees that are for curricular or co-curricular courses that are part of the program of study. And what we would ask school principals to do is to submit those to the high school managers, which would be one of the supervisors that oversees those area schools, just to ensure that we've got some consistency across the parish, and that we know that those fees are that we know about those fees at the district level, and we can get those approved. Because what we envision is that at the end of the school year and before the beginning of the next school year, we're going to have to come back to the table and just make sure that if there's any fees that we're wanting to assess kids that are not on here. So it's really, actually, it's been pretty difficult to get a grasp on all the different things that kids are assessed in our schools and that parents are required to pay. And so our goal was to try to get some district consistency across, and to have a better hand on actually what we're asking parents to pay for their kids. So we absolutely do not think that this is the final thing that we'll ever do. In fact, we envision by the end of the year to come up with an update on this Appendix A, which may potentially list additional fees that are required for particular areas of study. So also there's the waiver process, which is required by policy, the new state law, you know, a waiver process for parents to apply if they can't afford those fees, and that's approved by the school principal.
I had some other follow-ups on that, if I could. And I appreciate bringing some clarity and uniformity. I particularly appreciate bringing some clarity on how waivers will work, because I do think that will be helpful. You know, in the past, it was probably more of just a principal determination as to whether they wanted to do it, which could have caused all sorts of, you know, non-equitable type situations. So I think that's all helpful. I guess what I'd like to, dig in a little bit on, though, is just making sure that we have studied this enough to ensure that we are going to have enough to do what we've previously done, as far as comparing how much we've previously collected and how much we think we will collect under this new system, and whether we've actually run those numbers at all, you know, as we roll this out. Has there been any study of that a little bit further?
Yes, sir, and that was, our biggest concern was the high school principals.
Okay.
And I know as Ms. Maureen spoke with them and Ms. Fussell spoke with them, the district-wide of 20 and then the special course fee of 50, they felt they were comfortable in meeting their needs. And
So they felt that would collect at least a somewhat similar amount
to what they have in the past.
to what they have in the past?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's why we, as Ms. Stilley mentioned, that section about review as necessary. You know, we may have to come back in January, February, March, April, whatever it is next semester, and say, look, for the 2021 school year, we need to adjust the district-wide fee to this amount or and the special course fee to X amount.
Okay. Well, so then my next question on that is that if this is now going to be collected at the school level, have we developed a plan on how we, well, it's my understanding teachers in the past, let's go with Hammond High because that's the one I'm most familiar with. If a teacher, the English teacher, assessed a $5 classroom fee for her class, the student would go pay that at the school to the school, whoever collects it, but then it would be credited towards that teacher.
Correct.
And that teacher would use whatever was collected for her class to run her copies and all of that stuff. If we're paying it at a flat rate at the school level, how is that money going to be divvied out to the individual teachers to make sure that that's done in an equitable way for those teachers?
And let's say with the high school, if I have 4 core classes, then each core class, English 1, algebra, et cetera, would get that $5 of that 20. Then if a special course fee is X number of dollars, then that amount that is paid would be put into that particular teacher's account.
But is it going to be spread amongst all of the teachers depending on the total amount that they collect?
For, let's say, for English 1, yes, sir. All those English 1 teachers, all of that $5 would be put into that pot, and they would pull from there.
However much is collected from all of the students that had English 1, not based upon how many of that teacher's students actually paid, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So what you're trying to say, let me just make this clear. So if Ms. Jones has 25 students that pay $5, but Miss whoever only has 15 kids that pay $5, everybody's equal. Is that what you're telling us? All the teachers.
All of that money will go into the pot, and those students that maybe cannot pay that fee can apply for the waiver.
Okay.
And then when that waiver goes through, and however we're going to work that waiver, getting that finances, that would go into the pot. So everyone should be equal
Got it.
fee-wise at the end.
Okay.
Another question? Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna take- yeah, go ahead.
So,
Are you through?
Yeah, well, for now.
okay, any more questions?
Yeah. So what percentage, though, do we have of kids that just can't pay ever? Do you have any?
I do not know that offhand.
Is it
Ms.
large?
Sandra.
Is it?
I would imagine it's significant,
big?
depending on the schools, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
I was asking Ms. Tilly a minute ago about the waiver, the hardship waiver, and I know, I went ahead and pulled up on the LSBA website, because I just went to that workshop last weekend, and of course, this is due by December 1st, so I was glad to see, she said she was going to send y'all an email, so I went up, before I could even call, I saw y'all had it finished. But the waiver process is really not, I mean, we have to set our own, what we feel is our waiver process. It's not like stipulated what to put in the waiver. It's what we feel as a system is best for our waiver process. And it has to be if the waiver is denied, a process of how they can appeal the process. So where do we come up with these particular items that we're going to put for a waiver?
This was the recommendation of forethought,
But is,
and Mr. Moody.
but it's not, this is not the exact items that state law, you got to have a waiver. You have to have a waiver process, not exactly what's in your particular waiver.
It says that it says I have the alert.
Oh,
here.
good.
It says that the act contains objective criteria, that's the key word, which may include, but are not limited to the following relative to a student and his or her family. And and one is that, that they have unemployment benefits or public assistance, foster care, homeless, that they are currently serving or in the previous year had served in the military.
Yeah.
And that they are eligible for free or reduced price meals, which we have the community eligibility program, and a minor that is basically on their own. So those were how it was.
Some suggested
Yes.
suggested ideas of what to put as your waiver.
And when we sent this to Mr. Moody, he actually recommended that we include the military service, and the minor that, is without parents and pretty much on their own. But I mean, it does say that which may include,
Yeah.
so.
I'm just curious because forethought works for everybody who has money, as well as us who has limited money. So we're opening this waiver list pretty big. I'm just wondering if that's a smart idea for us, because we probably do have a lot of military people, which means we'll be waiving a lot of fees. We probably do have a lot of people who are on SNAP. That's going to waive a lot of fees. Can we cover all these fees if all these people fill out these applications because we put those things in our policy, is my question. I'm just worried about us not having any money.
And we discussed that in our many, Mr. Jenko underscored that, we were at many meetings. As we, same thing, we talked about all these things.
Can we cover it?
And, I guess that's one reason why I feel like we're closer to the deadline on getting this done, because it has been a very tedious process. Just just the whole student fees, because it would blow your mind, just the amount of fees assessed everywhere for just everything. And then getting that, and then also the objective criteria. So, I guess my thoughts on this would be and we do have those concerns, Ms. Dominguez, about, basically any given student would potentially qualify for one of these objective criteria, would be to, as we get into this, I just feel pretty confident that we're going to have to come back for revisions as we get into the actual implementation of this policy.
Yeah, like I said, the deadline is December the 1st, so we do
Yes.
have to vote on this today.
Something, so-
And come back and adjust, but I'm really concerned about, we're already limited on funds, and now we're going to open it up so that anybody in our whole district almost can apply for a waiver that we can't afford to grant.
And then which one would we eliminate?
Exactly.
That's the big question.
Well, I've been a big proponent for the last bunch of years, actually, about how much, and I've been in y'all's offices, several of y'all, many times, about how much we beg our parents to pay for and how many rolls of toilet paper. We're almost asking them to do too much. And instead of saying we need crayons, we got to have a specific crayon. So I've been after that. We need some guidelines, but this fee thing is a different ballgame, and I'm glad to see that we do have some lists in here about other items that we're going to be requiring our parents to bring, because you got several children, you really don't have the money to buy all those very specific, I need these particular white markers or whatever, they're more expensive, top of the line stuff. So, that guideline needs to be set big time. I thank y'all for a lot of work, because I was worried about it.
We did look at other district, we asked Forethought to send us even some other districts across the state that had a policy in this area. And as I recall, most of them did include these objective sort of criteria to consider. And I guess, what they're trying to get away from is the subjectivity of a principal or somebody just saying, well, this one's waived, but this one's not. So they wanted something more concrete to determine that. But we certainly are open to the board's thoughts on limiting the criteria, or just, if you guys want to approve it, and we can post it and then come back in the spring and maybe have before the next start of the school year, have a little bit more concrete, think about it some more, and come back with something else. But I'm not sure which one I would want to exclude from this list.
Well, the problem is, if we don't have something like this in place, who does it ultimately fall on? The teachers. The teachers come out of pocket for enough in their classrooms, then they have to pay for a lot of other stuff. So we have to put something in place where somebody's held responsible for these fees.
Mr. Stoller?
Yeah, I know at one time, part of the policy is to put a cap, obviously. And if I remember right, the last policy read that no one would be denied their grades because they couldn't pay. And that was a protection to make sure that we didn't hold something from someone who could not afford it. But I'm worried, like Mr. Dominguez is saying, that we're almost going to a different route where we say, how fast would the community find out, hey, look, if you're in the Guard or if you're in the military, you don't pay any fees. It's not a matter of if they can afford it. It's not a matter, it's just an entitled, hey, I'm in the Guard, so my kids don't have to pay fees, or whatever the case may be. And I'm just worried that we were going from taking care of those who could not pay quietly to openly making a list of those that don't have to pay. And once again, put another split in our community to say who's paying, who's not paying.
What if one parent works and makes good income, but another parent's in the military? Does that
Yeah.
absolve them?
Right.
There's a little more detailed criteria, maybe.
So, I have another, Mr. Jinko, I'm going to just ask again, this portion, I mean, do we have a percentage of students that we know qualify for these automatic hardship waivers? Have we run that number?
No, sir.
I mean, and I guess that's my biggest concern, is that the language in here says, if you're one of these things, you're automatic. One of
Well,
which,
they have to fill out that,
well, they have to fill
yeah,
out the
but-
form,
it'd be
but
great.
one of which is Medicaid, which with Medicaid expansion,
A lot of
that's
people-
probably 80% of our students. Easy, 80%
I
of our
was saying
students.
about 70, yeah.
But, so, and again, the issue with that is that if you can't get, if they get this waiver, I can promise you, most of our teachers, at least the really good ones, are not going to go without having their copies and their manipulatives. Basically, what we're doing is placing that burden, more of a burden, on our teachers.
I
They're
agree.
going to pay for it out of pocket like they already do. It's just going to be more that's going to come out of their pocket. And, the active military service is probably not, they're talking about people that got deployed, not just being in the National Guard.
Right.
That's not a huge one. Homeless is not a huge one. Emancipated minors, not a huge one. Foster care, regardless of how big it is, that needs to be on there. But just being on Medicaid, just having food stamps or SNAP, I don't see how that should be just an automatic hardship waiver. The other thing that I would say that I don't see on here is a per family cap. And am I I mean, I could certainly see a cap that says no family should have to pay more than a total of $100 or something like that. But, one child, $20 a year, I don't see where that ought to be automatic just for essentially 80% of our population. And then put that burden on our teachers, which is what this is doing.
I agree with Mr. Duncan.
What is the contingency plan in case we do fall short of the funding that's necessary for these items? What is the present contingency plan?
Some of the things we discussed was asking, mentors and so forth to step in and assist if there's a classroom that has X number of students that have not been able to pay because of the waiver. Ask a group or a church group or civic group to step in and pay those fees for that individual class. It's some of the things that we discussed.
Adopt a
Is this something
school.
that we've done before?
No, sir, this is as far as this policy, but I am sure they have had outside organizations that have stepped in to help students before.
Have they done that voluntarily, or have you solicited that?
Mr. Moore, that I can't answer. I mean, I know the central office hasn't asked for it. I don't know, maybe if the schools have asked the church or an organization. We're going on a field trip. I have 5 kids that can't pay, or whatever the case could be. But I'm quite certain it's happened. I am not aware of it personally.
I mean, I'm in favor of it, I just wanted to know if we had
Yes, sir.
done it before.
Mr. Jerry, you know, in my practice, I see a lot of children that are on Medicaid, but their parents make a lot of money. So I'm not sure how they get qualified, but they are qualified for it. And I know there's a lot of children that are on Medicaid that their parents do not have the money. So I don't know how you separate that. I don't know if you can separate it. It's all in or all out, I guess.
Any other?
Would it be, Mr. Duncan, going back to what you said, would we do an adjustment and just pass the thing but take out the SNAP and the Medicaid for now?
I would do, yeah, I would offer that and an amendment to put somewhere in here. I haven't, you know, like a family cap of some sort of,
No, but I'm talking about in this part that's the 1, 2, 3, or 4, just revise that top statement to
Okay.
remove those two things, and then also maybe stipulate in number 4 that it's deployed or something, not just active, but deployed. I mean, make the wording a little more so that if they do need to ask for a waiver, that we have some criteria that's more defined.
Well, if little Johnny can't pay and little Johnny does a waiver, does the teacher just go without that money? Or does Mr. Snoddelbach pay that $50, for instance, for little Johnny?
Well,
So
that's
the
what Mr.
teacher
Jinko
gets it.
That's,
Yeah, Mr. Jinko
That's-
just said that
that's,
they would reach out to community organizations.
Because it's a lot easier for us to vote on it if we know that y'all are gonna pay,
that's just
so the teachers
says that
don't have
they're
to pay.
Well, Mr. Tyler.
in active duty.
Okay.
Is ask Ron if the general fund pays the waiver. I don't know that either.
What's the answer?
I'm beyond, that is something we have not got to. I mean, we've talked about how we would pay for it, that the general fund would be an option, going to civic organizations would be an option. So, we have not
Adopt a
come
school.
down with if we get a waiver, this is what we're doing with it.
Well, and,
Okay, I would just like to ask the board, is this something that we want to table?
well, we can't
We
table,
can't table
We
it.
can't table it?
but I can say that
Can't table it?
if admin,
We gotta vote on it.
Okay, okay, so we're already at the limit.
administration did come to us with a plan on how to replace waiver dollars so that it's not essentially coming out of our teachers' pockets, that solves the problem. But in the meantime, since we don't have a plan to not add that extra burden on our teachers, I think at a minimum, if we've got to pass this, we ought to amend it to remove the automatic waiver for
Number
the,
one.
it would be
The
under
first item.
A1, removing the words Medicaid and the words,
SNAP.
yeah, or public assistance included. So
Okay.
Okay, if I
Let me
may
make
add, I know that it is not a very easy process to get qualified for either Medicaid or SNAP.
Right.
I think that if we have a state agency, a government agency that has qualified a person for SNAP or for Medicaid, then their resources are beyond ours. And for us to be able to determine whether or not that person is disqualified, and because we don't know pretty much how they qualified for SNAP or for Medicaid, I think that would be probably moving towards a prejudgment, and I would not want to remove this based on that. I mean, if you want to if you want to require that a person qualify or based on establishing their income as well, if you want to add that in there, then perhaps. But I don't see removing these two items if you're going to leave any of them.
Mr. Jenko, I got a question just to kind of clear my mind. My daughter's in art too. It was an elective. There's a fee. We're not talking about that fee, correct? Because I mean, it's an elective that she took on her own, and we knew it was going to cost $40. You know, we chose to do it anyway. I agreed to it, so forth. English 1 is not an elective. You have to have it, and it's $5 for her. So are we talking about two different, because if you're an ROTC or cheerleader or art 2
My
or-
understanding is that the waivers for any waiver of a fee that we have on here.
Okay.
It would be considered a special course.
Yeah.
But it also does cap those fees for those special courses, is what you
And they
said.
can get a waiver for that too.
And they can
Yes.
get a waiver for that.
So the waiver counts for the extracurricular
No,
activities as
no,
well?
that part says no.
Okay.
Well, it includes for the special
The
classes.
special classes, but not
Not
like a football
extracurricular.
fee, a basketball
Right.
fee, or anything like that.
And I'm sorry, and I don't want to
Or
get out of
cheerleading,
control.
right?
Can I
Yeah.
respond to what you talked about, Mr. Jerry?
Yes, go ahead.
My issue is the way that it's worded in here is that if you have SNAP or you have Medicaid, it's an automatic waiver. Okay, it doesn't, what you were saying, if we were to remove those, it doesn't prohibit somebody from applying for the waiver still under some sort of economic hardship, but to say that it's automatic, that's, like I said, that's 80% of the students that we serve. And so that's to me is the problem with just saying that we're going to automatically say that 75 to 80% of the students that we serve don't have to pay the $20 annual fee that keeps our teachers from having to pay this stuff out of their own pocket. I don't see how we're going to make that work.
Okay, Ms. Richards,
Make a-
you had something you wanted to add?
My thing is also, I agree with you, Jerry, is that if you have a family that qualifies for the assistance, then the state at that point has declared that they are below poverty level, which means that they should qualify for ours if there is a waiver. Now, because we have 80% of our students who cannot afford to pay, then we do need to come up with some type of creative idea to assist them in helping. But knowing the community and living in the community, I know that people are really struggling to pay these fees.
So, but for Medicaid, that's not accurate.
Well, okay.
For Medicaid, all you have to have
for
is a
TANF.
child in your home and not have employer-offered
Yes.
insurance.
Right, right,
That's,
for Medicaid.
I know we've talked about this for a while, but I'll give you one quick example. My best friend has 4 children. Talked to him at church Sunday. He just renewed his insurance. He's self-employed, had to renew his insurance. He had to go through the exchanges. I'm not really sure how all that works, but it kicked him out of his Blue Cross and put him into Medicaid. He wasn't looking to get into it. Financially, he's not anywhere near poverty. He still has to pay, I think
For
it was
Medicaid.
$1,600 a month is what his family plan cost through Medicaid. So we're not talking about necessarily, just because you're on Medicaid does not mean that you are not able to pay.
No,
that
not
$20.
Medicaid, but on temporary assistance for needed families, you are.
But according to this policy, you would automatically be eligible to have a waiver
Just
for all school fees.
okay, it's not Medicaid that I'm concerned with, it's more of the TANF.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion, Mr.
Just take
Chairman.
Medicaid out.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move at this time to strike the word Medicaid from the portion of the policy
Okay.
under A1.
And I'll second that amendment.
Okay. So is there any opposition to that?
And you're going to just leave the
We're
SNAP
going to leave
part?
the SNAP part.
Leave the snap.
I'm going to make a different motion for that.
Okay, okay.
Just vote on just the word Medicaid.
Medicaid, okay.
No, we just want to vote on that motion.
This is the motion as amended, or just?
This is the motion to strike the word Medicaid. Did we do that one?
Yeah, we're just making,
Okay, so the motion has been made to strike the word Medicaid from this one item on the document. Is there any opposition to that? Any opposed? Not, if it's not a, no opposition, so we strike the word.
All right.
Motion is,
Have an additional motion, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Mr. Duncan?
All right. It also would move at this time under economic hardship waivers, number 1, to remove the words supplemental nutrition assistance program.
Second.
That still would leave in, if they're unemployed, if they're on the emergency temporary assistance, or if they're on SSI, those provisions would remain. The only one that we would be striking in addition to Medicaid is just the general food stamps program.
So you're asking to remove,
Yes, remove that one.
to remove the exception of the waiver
The
for.
automatic, right, which would merit, where they would be automatically qualified for the waiver just by being on food stamps. It doesn't mean that they can still apply and show that they have economic hardships other than just being on food stamps. That's our motion.
You got my second?
Okay. Okay, so it has been, the motion has been made to pretty much basically remove the SNAP consideration from this one item on this document. Are there any opposition?
Yes, you have an objection, right? You want a roll call? No? Oh, never mind, okay.
No opposition?
I would just like to say, so everyone will understand, that this is still allowing you to apply for the waiver. It's just not automatically going to give it to you. That's all, that's just, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And the other, and I appreciate that, the other point that I would like to make before we vote, Mr. Chairman, is that I know that for me personally, I would like to find a way for us to put that back into this policy. However, what I'd like for us to do is for the administration to come back with a plan on how we're not going to tax that cost to our teachers if we were to put that back into the plan. And so, hopefully the administration's able to find a way for us to do that. But to say that you automatically apply for you can automatically get that waiver and we don't have a way to not pass that on to our teachers is what I'm trying to avoid at this point.
Or even passing it on to the general fund, which we know is lacking. Or what about the number 4? That number 4, Brett?
Well, we need to vote on that one.
Okay, so my problem with the issue is that we have not established criteria for qualification of the waiver. I don't see it clearly in here. Mr. Jenko, if I'm wrong, you can correct me. But there's no established criteria for getting the waiver. In other words, if a person wants a waiver, how do they know to even apply for it or whether they come close to even qualifying for that? So I think it needs to be clarified. What the qualifications for a waiver are, since we're removing these, then,
There's all those other things that's in there.
Put that list back
That's
up.
all the other
Oh,
things
Did
that
you
are-
have them here?
but
They're on the list,
It's all on the list.
all the others.
so we're going to consider foster care, homelessness, and
Military.
well, did we take the military out?
Active.
Okay.
Active.
Military.
Or being in an
supplemental
emancipated manner. Okay, all right.
Well, supplemental.
I do believe that, the conditions that would qualify you for SNAP would also qualify you for the emancipation item that's on the list. Okay, so,
Can I ask Brett? Brett, what were you saying about number 4, putting?
Well, I think you
Well,
want
we
to
still
vote
need to
on-
vote on removing the SNAP
Vote on the
portion.
SNAP first.
Well, he asked for no objection, any objections, and nobody
You
said.
already asked that. Nobody
did he?
objected.
Yeah.
I did.
When-
Okay, yeah, motion,
Oh, you gotta say
motion
motion.
passes, I'm sorry. Motion passes.
Okay.
All right, and then the last clarification is under economic hardship waivers, under number 4, would be, is serving in or within the previous year has served in, let's say, Tom, help me out. I'm trying to think like overseas deployment
Federal orders,
under, okay,
federal military orders.
under federal active military service orders.
Temporary duty, talking about temporary duty or something?
Where,
TDA?
I'm talking about, this is not just somebody who is in the National Guard or even is in the, active duty National Guard. We're talking about families whose,
Somebody's on federal.
they
orders.
have taken federal orders and is serving
Been deployed.
overseas or
Have been
deployed
deployed.
or something like that.
Under active deployed military services.
You just put in
Federal orders.
active federal military orders. Active federal military
I
orders.
You
think
don't
that,
need deployed?
well, that
No.
clarifies that we're not talking about,
National Guard.
You could be deployed under active orders stateside.
I'll second.
so number 4 should read, is serving in or within the previous year has served served in federal active military service. Orders, active service orders. Is serving in or within the previous year has served under federal active military service orders.
So that's one year before.
Year before or currently.
I'll second that motion.
I already seconded.
She got it. She did it, yeah. We didn't vote.
So,
Okay.
not being up to date on our military as I should, what does that do? That includes more people or excludes people?
Exclude.
Excludes.
some people, yeah.
We have, we have 5 or 6 different National Guard units in our parish where they have a significant number of people who work full-time for those units. And I don't think that it's the intention of whoever put this policy together to exclude all of those people. But I think the intention was to exclude those families who, one of their family members got deployed or, was, their regular employment was interrupted because they got ordered to go serve somewhere. So that clarification just makes it clear that that's what we're trying to do.
Need to vote.
Cindy, would you read back what it is that we're actually, the change that we're actually making?
Motion to amend under economic hardship waivers, number 4, to read as, is serving in or within the previous year has served under federal active military service orders.
That's it.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so the motion has already been made and second. Is there are there any more questions? Okay, the motion has already been made and second, so the motion is passed.
We didn't vote.
Any objection?
Oh, any
objections?
objections? I'm sorry, any objections? No objections. Motion is passed.
All right, Mr. Chairman, at this time I would move to adopt the proposed policy as amended.
Second.
Okay,
Okay, can were we gonna not try to put a cap on family cap? Come back to that, okay. Okay.
Okay, so a motion has been made and second on,
I did.
are there any objections? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finance.
Meeting adjourned?
Meeting adjourned.